And so hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for part one of the Illumination Works AR and IoT winter webinar series. And today's session will feature a unique technical demonstration that will showcase how PTC's augmented reality and IoT technology is applied to the pre-flight inspection for Blackhawk helicopters. Just some housekeeping notes before we begin. This session is being recorded and will be distributed after completion, as well as made available online. We will have dedicated time to answer questions toward the end of the webinar, but we encourage you to ask away. Just please type those questions into either the Q&A feature or the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. And again, we'll try to get to those at the end. For those of you that have joined us before, you know we're going to try to jam a lot of really good information and cool demos into just 30 minutes. So I'd like to start things off with just a quick introduction to our panelists. Today, I'm joined by Jim Blau, the digital transformation expert at Illumination Works, and Max Fritzhand, the IoT designer and developer at Illumination Works, who's going to be showcasing some of the demos. I'm Connor Sullivan. I'm partner marketing at PTC, and I will be the moderator today. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Jim to get us started.
Thank you very much, Connor. Hopefully everybody is surviving a cold and snowy winter all over the country. So as Connor indicated, we're going to build upon some past webinars where we talked about some of the augmented reality offerings that PTC has. And this specific use case is where you're going to look at the pre-flight procedural checklist that an Army pilot would go through as they prepare flight for the Blackhawk helicopter. So within this application we developed, the pilot will go from section to section as he checks off this procedure. And you'll see how that works as we go through the demo. We're going to augment this with capabilities with Studio, and you're going to be able to see detailed videos. You're going to be able to see highlighted areas. You're going to see animation. It'll guide the pilot through this process. This is great to eliminate any errors, also to train newer pilots so they know how to follow the procedure. So traditionally, the way things like this are done, checklists are done pad and paper. What we're going to introduce is augmented reality. Augmented reality is going to enhance that environment. It's going to make it a better learning environment, a more in-depth inspection, and much more repeatable, much less room for error. So what we built this upon was the toolkit of products. So you'll see from a software standpoint, we have Vuforia Studio and View. These are the AR offerings that PTC has as part of an overall family. Creo Illustrate is done for automation. And that's how the animation that is actually done within it is prepared. Creo is the CAD offering that PTC has. And then ThingWorx is the IoT offering. We're going to bring some data in and we're going to show you that. And we're going to show you the output of an inspection. Adobe XD was used for the UI, just to be complete list of software. And then we're going to use an iPad as part of this experience. It could be a wearable like a HoloLens or a RuleWear device. So we're going to go in detail to what Vuforia Studio is. It is a highly efficient, easy to use authoring tool that provides this very immersive AR experience. We're going to meld digital assets, physical assets. We're going to take things from a 3D standpoint, from a 2D standpoint. We're going to bring in all types of things. We will show you this. We'll actually show you an alert. All of this is part of this overall experience. One of the key things about Studio is Studio itself doesn't require in-depth development skills. We'll kind of talk a little bit how we kind of took beyond that as we go through and talk about what was done for the demo. So as I mentioned, Studio is where we create this experience. This is the tool that Max used to create this, and you'll see this not only throughout the demo, but when he actually goes through the details of how it was created. And Vuforia View is how we experience this AR experience. This is how we view it. when you look at an AR experience, there are certain components, a physical object. In our case, it was a Blackhawk helicopter. I then meld that with a 3D assets, CAD. So we actually brought in a CAD drawing of a Blackhawk helicopter, which is available, available on the internet. So there's nothing confidential about it. We bring in images, we're bringing in videos, and we also bring in IoT data. And you'll see that as part of one of the steps through our checklist. And then as we create this is we overlay 2D type of assets like a push button or a pop-up. And you'll see that again in our demo. This creates this overall experience that you'll see when we go through the checklist. So what we see from Studio is a few things. It is a simple UI design. It is a drag and drop. It is a widgets. It's got templates. All this stuff is brought in. We then have content integration. So with Creo, we bring in CAD drawings, so the detailed drawings of each of the components of the helicopter. We bring in with Creo Illustrate animations that we can use. And then through ThingWorx, we bring in this sensor data. So the data which we capture, and you'll see some pressure measurements. And then we do this thing called tracking targets. So tracking targets are how we begin and how we actually present the augmented reality experience. There are 3 of them primarily. ThingMark is an actual PTC code. And so I would actually view that on the iPad, and that would begin the experience. I could do a spatial target. So you actually see Max place the helicopter in our office, and he's placing this in a real-world environment, the merging of physical and digital. And then a model target. So I can actually take and view this device, whether it be a physical device or a digital device. And that also is a way of starting our AR experience. So with Studio, how do I go about using it? I create the experience. So within Studio, I create this. As I mentioned, we utilize widgets. You'll see Max dragging different assets into the work area. And then once it's created, I can then preview it. I can see what it's like. Once I'm happy with what I've created, I then can publish that out to be viewed across multiple different types of devices. I can also enhance what I do with Studio with different type of tools. So cascading style sheets, or I can extend it with JavaScript. So I have the capability of taking the powerfulness of Studio, but expanding that out. So here is a architecture view of what we're going to see. So we see to the left the CAD environment with Creo and Creo Illustrate. We see the Studio piece. We see ThingWorx bringing in information and data. And then finally, we see Vuforia view as how we view it. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Max, and Max will go through the demo of the Blackhawk helicopter inspection. Max?
Max, you might be on mute if you're trying to. There you go.
Thank you, Jim, for this introduction. We will dive into this demo, and then we will show some of the packages and tools we use to create this demo along with the capabilities. So we'll start off with the Blackhawk demo, and we'll showcase the pilot checklist using Vuforia View, as well as going into the analytics manager side in the ThingWorx mashup. And due to unfortunate technical difficulties, we'll have to postpone the Creo Illustrate to a later date, the next seminar. And then we'll jump into Vuforia Studio, showcasing how we bind as well as upload content. And then we'll jump into ThingWorx and show you guys properties as well as logging in data. So let's get started with that. I'm going to share my screen here in a second. I'm going to connect the iPad.
So as Max does that, we're going to see the actual, what a pilot would do, how they would see the experience as he goes around the helicopter from point to point, and you'll see that pop up.
Alrighty, one sec. Gotta just go on Zoom and there we go. All right. So here right now, this is a spatial target, and we're going to be placing the Blackhawk down, and we're going to explode it. So as the pilot, we have areas 1 through 8. That is standard for a Blackhawk UH-60. Here we have area 1. This is the main rotor blades as well as the windshield wipers. And we're going to select this pinger right here. And notice how it gets highlighted, right? So when you select the pinger, it all highlights everything right there associated to those model items. So let's select this one over here. And that gives us a pop-up showcasing further information for the pilot himself or herself, talking about the OAT sensor check, the wipers, as well as the avionics compartment. So let's continue with that. So here, we're going to continue to area 2 now. And we can check that off. And the cool trick with this is that we can also just focus in on one area, like the gunner window, for example, if you're unsure of something. So the FM antenna check, we can check the gunner's window as well as the position lighting. Let's continue that. You can also take a picture too. And we can accept that. So now let's check that off. Let's go to the next step. So here we're at area 3. This is the main rotor system as well as the top part of the UH-60. So this is the shell over here. And this is the main rotor system. So notice this gauge right here at the top. This is the AP oil level that is simulating data from ThingWorx. We're pulling in data and it's changing data real time. So we're going to now showcase this animation right here. Watch this animation. This was built in Creo Illustrate. And we can actually see some changes happening, like watching these screws come loose and replacing this clamp with a new clamp. So now we're going to stop that and we're going to go to the next step. So for the sake of time, we're going to skip to 6 and jump from 4 or 5 and go to the tail pylon as well as the tail rotor. So here we have area 6 over here, a bit of a walk, and we have the tail rotor, and we highlighted everything. Let's just focus on that area though. Just notice that level of detail right there. It's amazing. So if we select that, we can look at the task order at hand. This is what the pilots use. We can actually import that in. They can actually take their textbook knowledge that they have to read mandatory and just import that in. Very cool stuff. So let's continue. Let's go to 7 and 8. And now, after you're done signing off, it checks that you completed everything and automatically does that, ensuring that you did everything. So let's do my initials, and then we'll submit that. That was easy. All right, now let's jump into ThingWorx, showcasing the manager side.
So as Max gets into ThingWorx, kind of imagine the fact is, right, is typically that would be done with a pencil and paper, or even if it was some type of a thing, like an iPad where someone had just had a checklist. In case, what Max was able to show was the ability, right, to interact and bring pop-ups and show different kind of assets and guide you through this process, making it more repeatable, making it more consistent.
So we can see right here that it's logged for the manager analytics. So what about filtering? What if I just want to see the past 10 days or so? So we can actually sort that out by days. And if we even want to get even more specific, we can add another filter. So let's just go by employee ID. Let's do myself, for example. So we have the 19th and 10th. Looks like I did my job. All right, now we will jump into Vuforia Studio, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how to have a pop-up where you're able to upload images or videos, and you can show it and see it. So let's get to that. We're going to, so notice on the left panel right here, we have a bunch of widgets right here. So this is what we use to actually build the Vuforia Studio experience out. So we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. What you're looking at right now is the Blackhawk experience right here. So we have uploaded. Now we're going to go look for the cabin indoor task order. And we're going to select that and we're going to add it. So now it's added to the resources. Perfect. So now the next step, what to do with that, right? So we're going to drag a pop-up in here, a window of sorts, and we're going to make that a modal. So that is like the focal point of what we're looking at. And let's adjust this. Let's do 500 pixels by 500 pixels, right? So now we just have a blank canvas, what to do next, right? So we just uploaded that task order. Now let's actually get that in there and let's actually look at it. So now we actually have to find the image widget, right? So we're going to go and actually look for it. We can just scroll to the bottom. Here we go. Task order cabin indoor. Perfect. So very big. We're going to have to adjust that. Not a huge deal. Let's do 450. Let's see how that looks. Let's do 425. Might be a little better. Okay, cool. So let's take a button because, you know, when you launch this, we see that it's visible. Let's go back to the pop-up right here. When we launch this, we have that it's not visible, so you're not going to see it, right? So it's going to be like hiding, but we need to have an action to show it as well as hide it. So we're going to have this hide button right here. Let's call it close. Let's add a click event. Let's drag it to this pop-up. And we're going to tell that to hide it. Pretty nifty stuff. All right, now let's get a button over here. And we're going to open this guy up. Let's do show. Oops. All righty, and then we're going to show the pop-up. Perfect. So let's preview that. Let's see how this looks. Okay, you have to always sign in. Might tell you that a couple times. And then we're going to show it. Perfect. So it worked. That's awesome. And to take it a step further, you can actually add some CSS to it. So they have some default experiences right here. So let's say I want to add a button balance. I would just copy that. So let's go back to the home page. Button balanced. And look at that. All right. So from here, let's jump into ThingWorx now. So we have to log into there. It might take a couple tries. All right. So what we're looking at is the data shape of the overall log for the pre-flight checklist. And we're going to look at the field definitions, and we see the employee ID, the date they completed on, the sign off date, status, as well as the camera photos. And we can actually take a look at this and actually see the information so we can understand the base type of it. And you can see that's a date type, for example. So let's go to the log table and show what we do with this information after we've created these types along with the associated property. So here we have some services I've created. I have test 321. Let's open that up. So on the left side, this is the properties that I just created over here. I actually had to manually type them out, and I actually hard coded all that information in, which I'm not going to bore you with, but essentially this allows it to run this information into here. And from there, you're able to just store it into the log. So I'm going to type in my information right here. This is on the ThingWorx side, remember? So what we saw previously was on Vuforia Studio in the Vuforia view. Today's dates, 19th. So let's execute that. Perfect. So this is the ThingWorx side. So the cool thing about ThingWorx is that you actually have a lot of services that you can actually use that are already created. So let's look for query data table entries. And we can actually pull all the information that we created on Vuforia Studio as well as ThingWorx and actually get a huge table grid of information. So we can see all this information that we just created in the past historical information. So we have this one that we just created over here. And it's just amazing the what you can do with this data, like being able to filter it. And yeah, back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Max. Why don't you go ahead and let me go ahead. All right. So Max was able to show us the demo. So we got to see what the checklist looked like, the final product, you know, and leveraging Vuforia View. Then you got to see the analytics view, leveraging ThingWorx. Then he kind of went through each of the components and how they worked. We didn't show you Illustrate, but that provided the animation that was done. He did show you how within Studio you create this content. You pull in a button, you pull in a pop-up, and you create that, and how straightforward and easy to do that is provided with Studio. And then finally with ThingWorx is bringing all this data in, all the properties and the capabilities. So that is really marrying together augmented reality and IoT, which is really important because we look at what the value this delivers. So if we think about this, is it provides and improves workers, in our case, pilots, a very safe and efficient way to understand this. So they go through this process and they're led by it. They're getting a lot of information. If they need more information, there's other assets available. Very easy to consume. So instead of a checklist or a piece of paper, or even just, you know, there's some type of a list somewhere, I actually have a way of following this and actually seeing the actual helicopter. And then I can identify very quickly any kind of issues that may occur, any kind of failures. If you saw the oil pressure, if that was too high or we needed to address that. And then finally, it really improves the maintenance and in our case, the inspection to help optimize the asset, the helicopter, the efficiency, and make it so that when the pilot gets in, he knows that he is safe. So hopefully you found this as exciting as we did. This is a real good use of how augmented reality and IoT can provide capabilities, in our case to pilots. And we hope that you enjoyed it. We also have an addition, our next webinar, which will be in about a month, March 19th. This will really focus on ThingWorx in the IoT environment from something where we take a paint hanger and which would bring in an aircraft and go through the different stages. So hopefully you will join that later this spring. Hopefully when the weather gets a little bit nicer, we're going to have another session which will be IoT and smart factory and bases. So you may have heard of smart cities. This is that concept of being completely connected. So both PTC and ILW appreciate you taking time out today to join us. If you've got any questions on today's content, you want to learn more, feel free to contact Max and I at these phone numbers and also the email addresses. You'll have this information sent to you afterwards, so if you don't get a chance to write it down. Again, we thank you for joining us. And Connor, I'm going to turn it back over to Connor. Connor's going to have some questions he'd like to get some feedback on. Connor?
Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Max, for an awesome demo, and good to see some solid feedback coming in through the chat. So thank you to all the attendees for joining us today. I did just launch a poll, and that poll consists of about 5 questions. Just looking for some feedback from the audience about how the presenters did, how you liked the demo, and then of course your interest in augmented reality, and if you'd like to learn more. And as Jim mentioned, we do have another webinar coming up in about a month that'll focus on the paint hanger IoT demo. So no need to re-register. If you registered for this one, you're already set up for that one. And I do see a couple questions that have come in. Max, you might have already got to them. I know there was one about how long did it take to set the Blackhawk AR checklist up, and it looked like Maxie replied about 4 months. Is that typically how long we would expect these things to take?
Yeah, it takes quite a bit of time to create a complicated demo like this. There's a lot of back-end code you have to create, like showing and hiding certain widgets, as well as creating functions that, for example, when I selected all of areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8, it marked it down automatically as saying the status was complete, right? So there's just little small itty bitty details that help automate the overall process of it. So small things like that help improve the overall user experience for using the app itself. In terms of computer programming experience, I do have about 5 years of programming experience. I mostly have a bit of front-end development experience, and I would say it took me quite a bit to master Vuforia and ThingWorx. Started out in their PTC learning modules, which you can take a look at lms.ptc.com. And I went through all their modules. Took quite a bit of months, maybe 3 or 4 months to master it, and then I actually started to implement the knowledge. I applied it, and this was one of the things I was able to create, which is awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Max. And I think that wraps up the questions that we received. So again, thank you to everyone, and hopefully you enjoyed it. This recording will be distributed. So if you want to catch the replay and share it internally or externally, you'll have the ability to do so. But again, thank you to everyone who joined, and have a great weekend. And we hope to see you on March 19th for the second session. Thanks, guys.